Hello again. This is, I guess, the fourth video today. And I figure I'd do another character discussion, but I guess technically person discussion, because if you know anything about professional wrestling, it's about character. It's about putting on something for people to enjoy, to be entertained by. And today specifically, I'm going to be talking about Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes, although I haven't been watching as consistently lately, I still pay attention. I still pay attention when he's, brought up, when he's got a few things. He's got a whole thing with Drew McIntyre right now. I'm very interested to see where he goes, because it may end up being a feud, but that's a whole other discussion I can have. Matter of fact, any other wrestling fans here that are watching this, I hope you do watch this, because I'm curious on your thoughts about Cody Rhodes. But I'm kind of going to go through how I was introduced to Cody, because if anybody's been a long-time wrestling fan, they understand Cody's been around for since the early 2000s. I think it's even a couple of years after Randy Orton got popular. So basically, how I got introduced to wrestling was through a couple of family members of mine, my cousin Josh and Noah, and they were big WWE guys. They liked really watching wrestling. Constantly talked about John Cena, which is ironic nowadays, because it's now he's getting ready to retire this year. Major respect to you, Cena, by the way. Although, ironically enough, I was extremely irritated with Cena, because he was just everywhere. I got tired of seeing him everywhere. I always got okay, so why is this guy so special, blah, 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 and all that, but that's not the point. I remember specifically playing the SmackDown vs. Raw games on the Wii, where you're able to make your first, I think this was the one where you could create your own wrestler. I could be wrong. But I ended up playing the game one day with my cousin, and he specifically gave me a handicap of, you shouldn't use any of the better guys, you should use some of the guys that are a little weaker to try to beat me. And I'm like, okay, I guess so, because honestly, I wasn't really good at those wrestling games back then, or if at all. And my favorite guy that I liked to play was Shawn Michaels. But at the time, and this is before Cody dyed his hair blonde and he was a brunette for a little while. He had this dark brown hair for a while. I picked him. He was okay back then. He wasn't my favorite, but I kind of enjoyed it, and I just specifically remember playing as him in those games, not doing a very good job, and then, later on in life finding out that that's kind of what happened in WWE for him, because it's he wasn't, despite the fact that, which I didn't know this, by the way. I had no idea Cody Rhodes was related to Dusty Rhodes. I didn't even know who Dusty was. The fact that he was related to a legendary wrestler. Two, matter of fact, actually, because his brother's Dustin Rhodes, Gold Dust, which is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And not knowing that, what was strange to me is I had a weird gravitation towards him back then. I'm I kind of like him. I see why, I don't know. I never really watched any matches, unfortunately, but anytime I played that game, I had a weird gravitation towards him And ironically enough, a weird gravitation towards Triple H as well. Somewhat. Not like... I didn't like playing as him because he's just like... He was considered the bad guy. I'm like, oh, I was trying to play a good guy. But I didn't know how being a babyface and a heel worked, because if you know anything about Triple H, he flipped a lot throughout history. He flipped from babyface to heel, back to babyface to heel. I mean, that's how the business works. It's what's interesting, or at least the story aspect of it. And what's interesting is, I think, if I remember correctly, and don't get me wrong, I could never really, when I watched earlier footage of him when he was in WWE, I could never really tell if he was a good guy or a bad guy. He just kind of seemed like a snot-nosed brat. And I think that's what they were going for. And then where I fell off at was back in, before the Shield was a thing. It was... I think it was probably before CM Punk ended up leaving the company, because, oh yeah, I especially remember CM Punk. Heck, that might be one of the next people I talk about. But, and this is probably before even Cody leaves the company as well, to go to the Indies. And just specifically seeing him, it was strange as Stardust. Like, I never watched him, watched him as Stardust growing up. Me, as a current young adult who's 24, who watches a grown man, I mean, like, mind you, his brother's Goldust. But it's like, it's this really, I would call it a diet Goldust, almost. There's some aspects that's different, like the whole... I don't know. It just seemed like a diet Goldust of sorts. Because it literally has dust in the name. And he would sometimes have like a gold and black, silver color scheme. It was strange to me. I didn't really watch a whole lot of Stardust. And I felt, I don't know, in a similar light with where he was feeling, because I remember from what I've seen from interviews of Cody, it's like he felt tired of it. He felt tired of being this version of himself, not being himself. And around that point in time when I fell off of wrestling and not really enjoyed it, I was 8 years old when I was told wrestling's fake by my father, who was just trying to help me understand it. And heck, I was just telling him I wanted to be a wrestler, and I want to go out there and do all that when I was 8. And when he told me that, it broke my heart a little bit. Because when you're a little kid and your whole imagination goes wild and sees these guys who are huge, who do these weird moves that slam them on their backs, their heads, seeing them bleed, actually beat each other with like hammers and spiked bats, fighting in steel cages. It was, I mean, when you're a little kid seeing stuff like that, and seeing like guys like The Undertaker have like white eyes, that's like, your imagination goes wild. And around, I guess it was around the same time, I just completely was like, okay, I'm tired of seeing wrestling. I hate wrestling. And I had my little brother, who was a huge John Cena fan. And I wish I never did this to this day. He's like, the wrestling's fake. That's not real. John Cena's not actually hurting people. Da-da-da-da-da. I was bitter. I was angry. And around that same time, and I've said that multiple times already, and I apologize, Cody was at that point with the company, and it was back in 2014, where he was fed up. He was ready to just leave. He's ready to be done. And honestly, I didn't blame him. And I'm going to say this. I think part of the blame was Vince. A lot of his... Okay, look. Mind you, a lot of his ideas worked, and a lot of them don't. And one of those ideas was Stardust. And correct me if I'm wrong, please do so, because like I'm still learning about wrestling stuff from like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even 50 years ago. Like, heck, there's plenty of great stuff from the 1950s and 30s wrestling-wise that's really interesting, because that's the beginning portions of that. And I kind of don't blame him for wanting to leave. And I look back at that, and I see a lot of where I was as a 14-year-old. I was fed up. I was tired of being the person that I was at that time. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to be yet. Heck, I mean, nobody ought to know who they are at 14 years old. Nobody. And just being fed up and tired of feeling like a fake person. And seeing, and as I'm looking back more and more, and I see the character that Cody played, there's some similarities, not a whole lot. I'm not saying, Cody's wrestling career is an allegory for my life. It's not. The reality is we're two separate people. Like, he's a real guy, but him and I are not the same dude. Him and I are not living the same lives. He's got a family that's extremely legendary in the wrestling world. I'm just an average guy, which is nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with being an average guy. There's nothing wrong with being norm. Or, I would say your norm. There's nothing wrong with being your normal. There's nothing wrong with you. And I bring this up because it's very interesting to me. In those certain points of life, it just seemed like everything was ready to be done. Everything was just... We both needed a change. We both needed something for ourselves. That wasn't where we were at. And also in 2014 or 2015, if I remember correctly, Cody ended up not only leaving the company, but his father's health dwindled around that time. And it got so bad to the point where he just finally passed away in 2015, if I remember correct. And around that time, of course, this is when he's over at NXT training a bunch of the guys and gals that we see today, like Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, I think even Roman Reigns as well. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, blech. A bunch of these people that we see now, the Shield, he's responsible for training these guys. Also, mind you, like, these guys have their own history, but bringing them to where they are nowadays. Roman as the tribal chief, Seth Rollins as the... Sorry, I'm not a fan of Rollins. I'm not. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not a big fan of his wrestling. I think he's a bit... I don't know how to say this. I just feel like he's stale. And I don't know if that's necessarily his fault. And also, I'm going to say this. You can't keep blaming his injury for not being able to update his style. Because it's like, you can only do so many curb stomps. But anyway, that's not the point I'm trying to make here. Dusty died, but still left his legacy behind. But he also, from what I've heard from interviews, it's like, as well, Cody understood he didn't need his dad's tutelage to be who he was supposed to be. to become what he is now. And he went out and did his own thing. He figured himself out. He figured out what he wanted to be. He got married. He's out on the independent scene. He's learning what he wants. He's winning championships on those independent scenes. And then eventually, as he builds up the American Nightmare gimmick and asks his brother for permission to have that name, because the American Nightmare name was originally Dustin Rhodes' nickname back then in WCW when he was in Goldust. And so what happens next is, everybody knows, he went to go help open AEW, All Elite Wrestling, alongside Tony Khan and a couple others. He brought in, of course, a legend like Chris Jericho. He brought in the Young Bucks. He brought in Kenny Omega. All these different guys and gals as well that just he could make an actual company with. Which, I'll say this much, it's unfortunate what happened in AEW. He built up his reputation as a really good wrestler. However, for some odd reason, I'm not entirely sure. It's a mix of maybe some decisions on his part, and decisions on Tony Khan's part. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was just starting to get... People were just gotten tired of seeing Cody kind of be the odd one out, I guess. I don't know. And eventually, I think in 2022, where multiple things happened, by the way, which is, that year was crazy for wrestling, and I missed out on that. I didn't get back into wrestling until maybe like early 2023, but back in 2022 is when Cody came back as the mystery opponent for WrestleMania 38 for Seth Rollins. And I remember distinctively, just scrolling on my phone one day while I was in class, and I saw an article saying Cody Rhodes is back in WWE. I'm like, wait, what? He left? Okay, what happened? And I looked at the article and read that, okay, there was another wrestling company that was made with his, leadership, and with him co-leading it alongside Tony Khan, and and I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm glad he's doing better. Then, early 2023 is when I started seeing clips, or I believe, yes, early 2023 is when I started seeing clips of Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. And how, I don't know what it is, but Roman Reigns somehow kind of just hooked me back into wrestling. And just kind of over time, after that whole year watching some of his clips, I'm like, why am I getting all this wrestling stuff? Which is also how kind of the YouTube algorithm works, from what I understand. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I'm reading through, or I'm watching these clips, and I'm like, so this is what wrestling is like now? It's like, wow, this is actually really good. Because this is also coming from me enjoying better stories, better character-driven stories, and not just in anime and movies and stuff like that. Just seeing something like this, I'm like, huh, interesting. And then by the end, I'd say at the beginning of 2024, right before WrestleMania 40 was about to happen, and this is after the loss that Cody Rhodes had against Roman Reigns, something in that feud, that last bit, something hooked me. And that was the story that Cody was telling. with Roman Reigns. The fact, man, and I remember distinctly where I was. I was completely done with Bible college at that time. I was at a different job, working in a plastic manufacturing company, or a plastic roll manufacturing company, at a better point in my life than I ever was. And seeing Cody's story to where how much he loves his dad. He does. He truly does. And being able to witness not only in real time how this affected him, and finally being pulled right back into the fray of it, and actually started watching matches. Matter of fact, I started watching more WWE stuff again. I saw matches I never saw before. I saw matches when they were done. I was 5 years old. I started watching all these different stuff, and I finally got hooked back in. And through this story of Cody Rhodes and Roman were telling, alongside The Rock and the Bloodline and Seth Rollins, it was something special about it. Not only the family angle, which is important to me, of course. I love my family, I do. And seeing a little bit of myself in Cody in that moment, having to fight and prove himself, because it just feels like every day for me, as a person who's grown up in this generation, who's trying to figure out how to get his feet wet into something that he wants to do, and seeing a guy who's set in his way, who knows who he is and knows what he wants to do, and get that done and finish the story, it wowed me. Because honestly, I gotta say this, I wanted to be like him. I wanted to figure out who I was. I wanted to be confident in what I wanted to do. And I want to be something for my family. And just having that connection there. Because at that point in time, wow. At that point in my time, my dad's health was dwindling. He contracted double pneumonia at that time. And it was just kind of all the bacteria and all the different stuff slowly built over time. And this was months later, after WrestleMania 40. It's a little bit hard to talk about. I apologize. I'm not trying to be a blubbering baby right now, but there ain't nothing wrong with crying, but especially as a guy I am, we need it. We do. It just got harder and harder to want to do things. And the only thing that helped me at this point in time, number one, was the Lord Jesus Christ, that helped me get through that whole situation. And number two, how through wrestling the Lord was helping me through Cody's story, and how much it was a blessing to me to keep going. And remembering that night when I got Peacock for the first time, and watching actually both nights of WrestleMania. I think I watched the first night and then only the last match of the second night because I wanted to see where the story was going. And wow. To finally seeing Cody win that belt, to hear the announcer just have emotion. I couldn't help myself. I cried that night. Genuinely, I cried that night. And I couldn't help myself. I could not help myself. Because the fact that it wasn't just about him. It was about his family making a promise to his dad to win that belt. That was worth it. And remember seeing that night. I just kept on going. It kept me going. See, and having to work a lot more made it harder for me to see my dad. I worked 12-hour shifts, and it was harder to go see him. And I had a production schedule, and I wasn't able to go to the hospital except for maybe one night. And I remember being in that room, seeing him in that state where he's sitting there barely breathing and has something hooked up to his back that's draining the blood and the fluid out of his lungs. It was hard to watch. It was hard to be there. But I remember it. I got to keep going. I can't give up. I can't give up. Especially not right now. And I prayed for him. Believed that he'll be able to get out of that hospital. And just still remember, there's more. There's more to fight for. That family is worth fighting for. I doubt he'll ever watch this. Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Roman. You got me through a lot. And you gave me my love of wrestling again. Thank you, both of you. And I hope you understand that what you do does encourage people. And I'm happy to say my dad is no longer dealing with that. It's been over a year, or no, actually. Yeah. I think about 8 months. Or actually, close to a year. Because it's past September and October is when it happened. And he's still walking. He's doing better. Praise God Almighty, he's okay. He's doing better. He's still walking around more. He's going to the gym more. And I thank God every day that he's still alive. I do. Thank you guys thank you, you too, for bringing me back into a world that I never wanted to be a part of. That I thought was just ridiculous. But I was wrong. I was sorely mistaken. And I will always have a connection to wrestling because of you two. I will always have that connection. And I remember back in 2024, last year, back in August, SmackDown came to Oklahoma at the BOK Center. And, oh man. We sat up in the nosebleeds and watched. We just sat down in our seats. We saw the ring. Saw the WWE logo in the middle of the ring and just sat there and waited for the show to start. And then I believe at the beginning of the show, they had Cody Rhodes come out with his championship, and this like few months after WrestleMania back in April. And just seeing him in real life, just even from a distance, just was amazing to see. Seeing him walk up in his suit carrying the title on his shoulder with the American Nightmare tattoo and his blonde hair, walk up and talk about what's going on, getting prepared for having a match with Kevin Owens, and then eventually having his feud with Kevin Owens because of bad blood. But this is before everything, before Kevin turned heel. And then also that night as well, this was the return of Roman Reigns. He came back that night, and this was after SummerSlam as well. Because this, if you remember, at SummerSlam, his actual first return to WWE, not first return, but his return back after WrestleMania. Oh man, what a wonderful, wonderful thing. And Solo making his own bloodline with Jacob Fatu, and the Tongas, and having a story with Cody and Roman coming in at the end to help beat Solo and helping Cody retain the championship. What a great story. I really enjoyed it. A lot of people, though, from what I understand, kind of didn't like that with Solo. I enjoyed it myself. I did. It's not perfect, but I still enjoyed it. And what he's doing now, it's actually really interesting. And I'm kind of curious what they're going to do with the Wyatt Six now. But and I remember that night specifically. And this is after everything. Man. Seeing Roman Reigns' theme kick in. Seeing Solo and the Tongans get their crap beat in that night. I think it was mainly... Yeah, it was mainly the... And this is before Fatu was brought in, actually, if I remember correctly. Too. Now that I think about it. And it was just the Tongans and Solo. And seeing him just do the Superman punch and the spear and smashing them all across, my gosh. Just seeing Roman Reigns in real life as well is amazing. Even if it was from a distance, that was great. Man. that solidified me as a Roman Reigns fan. That night, seeing Cody solidified me as a Cody Rhodes fan, and then it solidified me as a wrestling fan, not just a WWE fan, a wrestling fan. Just being there and actually just hearing, I mean, I won't lie, I was yelling like crazy. Especially that night when they had the match with Braun, Kairi Sane, I think, and Liv and Dom getting their crap kicked in on that intersex tag match. That was a cool match. And seeing Kairi Sane stand up on Braun's shoulders was great. Just seeing all these terrific guys and gals, just, of course, so athletically talented and just charismatically gifted to portray characters, to be these people, is amazing. And seeing these top guys perform at the level that they are, and being the characters that they created themselves and not have anybody else to interact with. And just, it's basically them. It's basically them, just with some amped up to 11, I think The Rock said. I mean, I kind of agree with it, with what he said, because literally that's what The Rock is. It's literally himself amped up to 11. And it makes a lot of sense how these individuals just become these people. And I want to say this. I know I'm kind of straying away from Cody a little bit, but it made me a fan of a lot of the people there. Through his actions, I became more fans of, like, Kevin Owens. Of course, ironically enough, I used to not like Randy Orton, but now I do. I like Randy Orton a lot. And being able to see that Cody was still there and being the champion at the time, and then eventually having that feud with Cena. I mean, Cody was there when he became a bad guy. And Cena won that title that night. Also, yeah, by the way, I'm not a huge fan of that match either. Like, no, I remember I watched both nights with my family that night. And my dad was watching it, and he could kind of care less, which is fine. But me and my brother watched it that night, and we were like, this is okay. We didn't need Travis Scott, and that horse has been beaten to death. We get it. That was literally months ago. It's already done and passed, and I don't know if he's going to ever come back. I hope not. No offense, I'm glad you're a fan. Just be a fan, brother. We don't need you in the stuff. Give us more people like Jelly Roll. We need people like Jelly Roll who are willing to lose the matches. Because it makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to get a bunch of people riled up. But, point being, seeing the character that Cody presented and helped me to rebuild the connection towards my family a little bit here and there. It's not perfect, and I'm still working on it. And I'm happy to say, at least, I was able to take some time to rebuild myself as well in the Lord, and being a Christian who's also a wrestling fan. Just have my Lord and Savior help me through different things and things that I enjoyed to move forward. And I'm just going to say this again. Thank you, Cody. I don't know if you'll ever watch this. Thank you for bringing me back into the world of wrestling, because it brought me closer to a family member of mine that passed away as well. But I'll go into that another time if I talk about another wrestler. But thank you, Cody. Thank you, Cody Rhodes. And I doubt this will get to him. If you're able to, please share it to him. I genuinely want to thank him for shake his hand and thank him, because his story with Roman And the things that he did then brought me back into it. I unfortunately don't. I watch the more important stuff, of course. I've watched the PLEs. I did. And I still care about Cody. I still do. But I'm at the point to where I've watched other stuff. I've been watching some TNA stuff with AJ Styles. Stuff like that. Heck, matter of fact, I might talk about him next. If I'm able to. But, which ironically enough, that's also another guy that Cody ended up wrestling after WrestleMania 40, which is cool. He had a whole thing in Clash in Paris. I think it's Clash in Paris. And just, it was cool. It was cool. And I'm looking forward to what they're going to do with AJ Styles. And I think he's kind of become my favorite nowadays, especially with him becoming a good guy again. Yeah, he's definitely my favorite. There is a place for Cody and Roman still there in my heart for them, because they're great guys. And especially with how they're showing Roman to be this, it's still the same guy, but he's a good guy somewhat. It's an interesting story to tell, and he still encapsulates that. And I don't know what they're doing with Roman, but they're doing really, really good with him. And also right now, it seems like there's a really good story for Cody with Drew McIntyre. You know what? I might actually do CM Punk instead next, and then do Styles at some point. But anyway, because that whole Black Blood feud with, oh my gosh, anyway. Y'all have a good day. I'm glad whoever watched this, I hope you're blessed by it. I hope you are entertained by it. And I hope we can start a discussion with this. Thank you guys. Have a good day. Bye.